Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Ag Forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions, your premier platform for real-time global insights. Well, in this video, we need to start off by taking a look at the jet stream flow because there are some quite familiar features in this flow pattern. Specifically, the zonal flow, the west to east strong winds coming off of Japan that then split here in the Gulf of Alaska before diving into a deep trough over Texas. The subtropical branch of the jet stream meets up with the northern branch and they take off toward Maine. A couple of the big features to be watching out for. The split flow out west, you can even see the high over low circulation going to continue to keep the western part of the United States, specifically the west coast, not the western part, but the west coast on the drier side of things. And if we continue to bring troughs into this area that then move and kind of eject here toward the north and east, very, very wet conditions remain under that jet stream. So as we think about that, let's go back and just take a look at the last 24 hours or so in terms of our cloud cover as viewed from infrared satellite. We can see the flow pouring over the northwest, diving down toward Texas before rebounding and taking on off to the north and east. This is drawing an abundant amount of moisture out of the Gulf of Mexico and supporting the severe weather we've seen over the last 24 hours here in the lower Mississippi River Valley, which will be moving toward the south and east throughout the day, today on Thursday and into Friday. Now with that moisture transport, the flooding threat is very high in this area. I'm talking about the Mid-South, Tennessee, Kentucky, stretching all the way down to Mississippi, Alabama, and east of there. But before I move away from this animation, I want to point out one last neat thing. If you watch the end of the animation, you will see, in fact, I'll just pause it and show it to you. Getting out here toward the end as the clouds clear, we actually let the satellite see all the way down to the surface. And that is actually seeing some of the snow that piled up right in through this corridor over the last 48 hours or so. Let's talk more about that snow in a few moments because I want to get back to the severe weather threat today. Early morning hours this morning, a lot of active thunderstorms through parts of the lower Mississippi River Valley, getting over toward the Tennessee Valley, which stretches, of course, through Mississippi and Alabama. Tens of thousands of lightning strikes still active this morning, and the severe weather threat will be moving east throughout the day today. Now, this preliminary reports we have here was from pretty early in the morning, so I anticipate this number to increase today. But as of about 3 o'clock this morning, we had already had 19 reports of tornadoes, most of which were in Mississippi. Throughout the day today, the Storm Prediction Center is identifying this corridor from the panhandles of Florida, getting into parts of Alabama, but most of Georgia, North and South Carolina. This region today, chance for some isolated supercells, rotating thunderstorms, which means potential for some tornadoes. But you'll see in the forecast in a few moments, strong straight line winds will probably be the name of the game moving forward here. So coming back to that snow, models did an excellent job picking up on this snow swath, generally forecasting like we talked about between 2 and 5 inches in through here. Heavy snow was back in Texas, which we saw on satellite a few moments ago. But where did this snow come out of? Much of it came right out of here, the northern Rockies. Very heavy snowfall parts of Utah, Wyoming, Colorado as well, and southern parts of Montana. And that created some pretty crazy travel conditions right here in the Front Range. But you're going to see here in the near term where our biggest snows will be accumulating moving forward are going to be right up in this corridor stretching over into the northeast as our storm track shifts a bit more to the north. So my largest concern, and let's let this begin our rapid update here, is going to be for the increased flooding threat into this area. Over the last 3 days alone, we've picked up between 3 and 6 inches of rainfall, and it has really been concentrated there in parts of the Tennessee Valley and the Ohio River Valley. So I'm talking about eastern Tennessee and Kentucky, stretching into northern Alabama and Mississippi. We know that right now, over the next 48 hours, so this gets us out until Friday night or so, this same area still has more rainfall to be had. You can see generally 3/4 of an inch to 2 inches of rainfall in that area. Meanwhile, just over the next 2 days, the flow pattern is still doing this. So we're going to be talking about some snow and some ice in the interior of the northeast. A couple of clipper systems bringing some light snow that will stretch from Montana through the Dakotas, Minnesota, eventually into Nebraska and Iowa. But more snow adding up here in the Rocky Mountains. But California, that split flow is causing another few days of drier conditions here. Now let me take you from this Friday night all the way to next Friday night. So looking exclusively at this Friday night to next Friday night, the pattern doesn't change. Heavy rainfall in this area, snow here that extends through Wisconsin, Michigan into the northeast, while the split flow out west keeps things dry here, but the flow runs right over that, still hammering parts of the Pacific Northwest, and we're going to be adding quite a bit of snow to the Rocky Mountains, both central and northern. That's our setup as we move forward in this forecast, at least through the next 10 days or so. So I'm very concerned about these river gauges, which are already showing moderate and minor flooding, to then switch over to major flooding as we move forward. Right now, the only major flooding we have reported across the country in terms of river gauges is here in the Pacific Northwest, specifically in the Puget Sound. But we will probably see this even happening throughout the day today, several of these reporting gauges going over into that moderate to major flooding. So this is a major concern of mine moving forward. Our all hazards weather map, let's start west with the flow coming in like this. The Intermountain West still showing with a lot of winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings. Locally, very heavy snowfall possible and some extremely fast winds. Then as the jet stream is diving in through here, taking them back off to the north and east, a large section of the country under flood watch. We have flood warning here, tornado watch here, and strong wind advisory down here in parts of Florida and southern Georgia. Meanwhile, on the backside, you'll see some light snow still in this area. And as the winter weather advisories extend into the northeast, we could be picking up quite a bit of heavy snow here. Now, this is just system number one. You will see into midweek next week another large low pressure system that's going to be following a very similar track, producing very similar hazardous conditions. Let's watch system number one leave first and then get a better handle on what we're anticipating at least through the end of this week. So I stopped this early this morning. Widespread rain through the southeast, adding more through the mid-morning hours to that region that's already seen between 3 and 6 inches. You'll then notice, keeping your eye on the southeast, that throughout the day today, the severe weather threat increases by mid-afternoon, coming out of Alabama into Georgia and North and South Carolina. Like I said, the threat for rotating thunderstorms, which could produce tornadoes, isolated tornadoes, is relatively high, but it's going to be primarily the squall line event tonight into the overnight hours into early tomorrow morning that comes racing through that area. Meanwhile, on the backside, shift your attention now to the eastern Corn Belt. We're dealing with some light snow, and what will start off as freezing drizzle in the Ohio River Valley this morning switches over to some light snow later on today. Then, look at this, into parts of Tennessee and Kentucky in the overnight hours. Don't be surprised to wake up to some snowflakes flying in this area as the system moves toward the north and east. In the interior of New York, getting up to Maine, we do have the threat for ice, and then this will, of course, convert over to snow late in the forecast time period. Bring your attention back to the midsection of the country in the Rocky Mountains. You can see the flow here, bringing in this light snow from Montana through the Dakotas, Minnesota, and eventually into Iowa. And that light snow could spread into Nebraska and even over here into the central Corn Belt as we work our way into Saturday morning. It's very light snow, though, at this point. From here, I just want to play for you the operational European model all the way through the next 10 days. And what we see is there's no slowdown in the activity. That's what we get when troughs continually penetrate into the western United States and then lift toward the north and east. So getting into some of those details, let's watch it again. We've seen the first system leave, so let's get past Friday night into Saturday morning. Again, light snow in through this area, just on these little short waves that keep sneaking around the upper level ridge that's still plowing into the northwest. As we move forward, though, next system of consequence for the midsection of the country emerges Sunday morning. The low pressure system has a pretty far to the north track. It's here. It's over Minnesota and Wisconsin. Therefore, the heaviest snows will stretch from the Dakotas through Minnesota into central Wisconsin and then eventually over into Michigan. To the south of it, mainly from the Illinois-Wisconsin border south, right in through this corridor, we're talking about rain, cold rain here, but then stretching down into Texas. All of this fed on strong southerly winds coming out of the Gulf. That's just the weekend system that's out by Monday morning already into the north and east. Now it's going to leave a boundary sitting right here. And because of that, we see Monday morning into Monday afternoon, evening, getting into Tuesday morning, just a continual chance of rainfall in through this corridor. And so that's adding to what we've already seen in heavy rainfall in that same area. Now, our models have been honing in on, by next Wednesday morning, the development of low coming out of the Colorado Rockies. It then emerges into the Central Plains and takes that same trajectory. Colorado starts here, races through Iowa, heads up toward Michigan. That's going to be the trajectory of a Colorado low. If you're south of the line I'm drawing here with the mouse, that is where we're going to see the rainfall. But the models have been pretty consistent with producing this low pressure system. And while details are, we cannot look at this and try to find those details, we will be looking out for the potential for some very heavy snowfall on the backside of this, possibly even blizzard-like conditions with heavy rainfall and possibly another severe weather outbreak next Wednesday, Thursday down here over parts of the lower Mississippi River Valley. And that system takes on off to the north and east. And what do we do again? We leave a boundary right here. You can see it. High pressure cell here, high pressure cell there, right in between the two. We squeeze the atmosphere. And that's why this corridor is the corridor I'm worried about most through the next 10 to 15 days. So with that as the setup, putting it all together, that flow pattern is just well advertised. We're looking at the European model next 10 days in terms of precipitation anomalies. The high over low setup here keeps the west coast dry, but it comes into the northwest, dives in, bringing big snow to the mountains, and because of these next two systems, big snow's in through here and heavy rainfall in this area, and it all gathers in the northeast. This is an extremely active pattern for this time of year. And that's the way it's going to be looking here. In terms of snowfall, chance of getting 3 inches over the next 10 days, well, yeah, it's big time out in the west. But because we do not have any atmospheric river events setting up, we're not adding much to the Sierra Nevada in the near term. Where we see 3 systems pushing through over the next 15 days here, parts of the Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, getting into Michigan, we're adding quite a bit more snow. But notice the southern line of this is not getting too far to the south, which means these systems are keeping the more northerly storm track. Looking at the chance at getting at least 6 inches of snow, this is what we've got. So again, starts here, plows through Michigan, northern Ohio, into Pennsylvania, on off to the north and east. That's our best chances here. And of course, out in the Intermountain West. So that's your look over the next 10 days at who has the best probability of grabbing more snowfall out of this. And from here, I just want to give you a quick recap on our teleconnections. 1, polar stratospheric forecast is regaining its composure and it's going to sit over the North Pole and at times really invade parts of Northern Europe and Russia. Okay. Secondly, Greenland can't shake its trough. That means the North Atlantic Oscillation stays positive. That means the eastern third of the United States will resist getting cold air stuck in place. The West keeps having troughs that dig in. The pattern stays active because the global wind anomalies are high. The tropics are not advertising any sort of a change in this. And this ridge setting up over here, I'm calling it the Cuban to Bermuda Ridge, seems to be the persistent feature feeding moisture into the south and eastern part of the United States. So therefore, when I press play on this, you're going to see those particular features playing out very well. And that's the animation moving forward. So let me just pause this here and show you what I'm talking about. If I just take you out to day 10 or so here, see the ridge pushing into Alaska? With the trough over Greenland, the trough that comes into the United States will stay west. It doesn't set up shop where it's just sitting here over a broad section of the central and eastern part of the United States. The protection comes from that Cuba to Bermuda ridge right in through here. This flow pattern, if it persists, is going to be one that is going to give us a very active spring. But that's an if it persists. So what I want to talk next are temperatures. With that pattern setting up, the chances of bringing in sustained cold air over the next 5 days is pretty low across the lower 48. Out to days 5 through 10, when we really see the ridge building into Alaska and that trough setting up here, well, the battleground is between the temperature centers here, warmth in the southeast, cold in the west, and that's where things are going to be quite active here. And this extends all the way out to days 10 through 15. Good model consistency here, pushing the ridge into this area, dropping the flow like this, keeping this area on the warmer bias, cold and snowy in the mountains, active in between. That is the name of the game. Now I want to share with you brand new model updates which just came out last night. This is the seasonal European forecast for March, April, and May. We see the models hanging on to persistence. This doesn't mean they're right, but it hangs on to persistence. And those teleconnections I just told you about, I believe they're allowing them to continue to constructively interfere in the long-range forecast, which means that paints the eastern half of North America on the wetter side of things. Now, I've seen the last 3 months of the model run forecasting this same pattern for spring. There's trend supporting it, but it is not set in stone, okay? There could be something that comes along at the end of February or the beginning of March that could upset this and completely slow the global winds and give us a much more amplified pattern that has a tendency to get blocked. I'm going to tell you to watch Alaska and Greenland as the main bellwether on this pattern. Because right now the tropics, absent of El Nino and with the MJO in null phase and not high amplitude, that's not giving us a strong signal coming out of the tropics. So keep your eye on Greenland and Alaska, okay? In terms of temperatures, bit of a change in the west. The cold we're seeing now may moderate with time, but we don't see much in terms of cold, much colder than average weather, except for what we're noticing here in the North Atlantic, where it has been cold for quite some time. So watch this in context of my long-range update, which we released yesterday. Go take a look at that one, please. To finish this up, I'm going to take you on a quick world tour of the winds, and let's go right down to South America. The monsoon is really cranking right now, and just looking at a few pieces of information coming out from IMEA, Mato Grosso is reporting going after some big safrinha corn acres. But right now, the wetter than average conditions anticipated over the next 10 days may slow that down somewhat, because we're trying to actively harvest a soybean crop, and we've seen wetter than average conditions showing up in the models in this area. Meanwhile, in Argentina, these rains are quite beneficial to the full season crops down here, because they're going through a critical time period, and getting a little bit of extra rain now is going to be very beneficial. It's dry in southern Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay over the next 10 days as the monsoon has really cranked itself up in this position. So we need to watch out for heavy rainfall in and around Mato Grosso, Goiás, Tocantins, Minas Gerais, that region, because they are trying to get some of the first crop of soybeans out right now. And that will determine how quickly they plant that safrinha crop, which is expected to be a big corn crop at this point. So some adversity coming out of South America. Lastly, I just want to give you a quick update on Australia. We are experiencing forecast models showing up with very wet conditions here in that same area where we saw all the fires right in through this area, so continued very heavy rainfall. And there is a cyclone that's coming in here on the western side of Australia that will be bringing very heavy rainfall and strong winds down through the west coast here. So I want to keep you up to date with what's going on there. But with that, I'm going to wrap this one up. Hope you have a great finish to your week, and look forward to giving you more updates soon. Thank you.